Shahid, who is a leading scholar and embodying this rich tradition and history of female scholarship. She's also an educator by profession and having studied Islam alongside Arabic in Syria for 5 years. She's delivered talks and courses at many universities across the country, including Cambridge, Imperial College, Warwick, and many others. We're very happy to have her here. And she's just going to give us a short, 15-minute talk about the general topic, and then we will definitely answer all the questions that have been texted in and open up to the floor as well to anyone that wants to discuss the topic with these people.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد خاتم الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everybody. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a great honour to be here. I've actually been involved in many ISOC events discussing the topic of women, actually, and so what that shows is the great need for clarification on the topic of. So I was saying that I've been speaking at many events, ISOC events, university events regards women. So really that shows us the great need of clarification on the subject of women, and that this is a topic that really everyone is seeking clarification on. Just recently I was at the University of Lincoln and the subject was female role models in Islam, and this week also in another university, University of Hull, again is the topic of women in Islam. Next week again this topic of women in Islam. So you see the great need to clarify this, and when we actually look at the Islamic tradition we see that there are really great women of inspiration, great women, role models actually, who are completely the opposite to the media representation of women. I mean, normally you get this sort of image of, a woman who doesn't leave the home perhaps, completely covered from head to toe, doesn't have personality, is not able to connect with the wider society. This is the common image of Muslim women, and it's really high time that we clarify for everybody the position, the exalted rank that Muslims believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to women. Because when revelation came, it came to actually elevate the state of women. In the society, the rights that they were given were unprecedented at the time. The women were treated like worse than chattel. They were treated worse than animals. And so, while the Western world seeks to achieve women's freedoms through campaigns and legislation, Islam laid out the rights of the female in revelation. So we don't need to struggle for our rights, because they're already laid out in the scriptures. You see, they're all there. We don't need to starve ourselves, throw ourselves in front of horses, or do anything to gain our rights, because they're already there. And this is what makes me as a Muslim woman feel really valued. I don't need to prove myself, because I know that I do have a great position in Islam just as the males do. That I'm not any less than the males. And actually the criteria that makes a person better in the sight of God in the religion is piety, is righteousness. Gender is irrelevant. Gender does not matter. What matters is God consciousness, piety, righteousness. These are the things that matter and can make a woman, a wife, better than her husband. This is a reality, and this is what Islam teaches. Muslims believe the Quran to be the final word of God, and it's guidance on how to live an upright and moral, ethical life. And the role of women in society, in fact, both men and women, is to live as upright citizens in the society, to have this God consciousness, to spread good. We are the first ones to condemn terrorism. because Islam is about spreading peace in the land. And according to the Islamic tradition, it's no more a man's world than it is a woman's world. Women are part of the society, they are citizens in the society, and they have all rights according to them. And when revelation came, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came with revelation, the 7th century Arabia was transformed from the law of the jungle to the most advanced legal system where the oppressed could hope for justice, where women could free themselves from the shackles of prejudice and break the chains of humiliation, mistreatment and denigration. The pre-Islamic era of Arabia was replete with ill treatment of females. They suffered great injustices and they were exposed to great and diverse kinds of humiliation. They were treated like material property to be disposed of at the whim of a male guardian. Just property to be handed around. This was the reality of the pre-Islamic woman. And so Islam came and actually did something revolutionary. She was now able to inherit. And this was something unknown of even in the UK. You know, women had to suffer a great deal to reach a level where they could actually claim their property as their own when they got married. All their property was automatically conferred to their husbands. That was the reality. It was just very recent times that this was changed. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, established women's rights through his sayings, his commands, and strengthened their position and status. And he advised the believers to take care of women. Muslim women have full legal capacity. They have full rights to property. They have complete independent possession of their property. No man has the right of ownership to her property. They can enter into contracts, and these rights strike us very progressive in today's society. So in Islam, humiliated women were honoured, debased women were elevated, oppressed women were liberated. And Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the second caliph of the Muslims, said that by Allah, we did not used to think that women had anything until God revealed about them what He revealed in the Quran and distributed to them what He distributed. And that is really telling of the reality of the situation of pre-Islamic women in the Arab society at the time. Divine verses were revealed, and actually divine verses were revealed defending the honor of Sayyidah Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, peace be upon him. That this is, we have a chapter in the Quran named after women. So, women have always, from the very early Islamic period, have always been integral parts of the society who have contributed greatly to the society, and we have had the greatest examples of scholarship in the household of the Prophet himself, peace be upon him. Female scholarship, Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. She was the wife, as I mentioned, and she was a great scholar whom even the male companions consulted her, asked her advice. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "The best among you is the one who is the best towards his wife." He also said, "Paradise lies under the feet of mothers." On another occasion, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was questioned, "Who deserves the best care for me?" And he replied, "Your mother." And he repeated this 3 times. And when he was asked the 4th time, he replied, "Your father." So Muslim women are elevated, are honoured, are esteemed. They don't need to compete, in society to try and gain their rights, because they're already, as I mentioned, they are given to them by their Lord, by their Creator. And you have to question, you have to ask,
why is it you have converts coming into embracing Islam from the British white Muslim is rising? Why is it? What is it that's making them embrace Islam? Because who would want to attribute themselves or embrace Islam when they're going to be oppressed? You see, we have to go beyond the veil and understand that really spiritual inclinations is search for meaning and purpose in one's life that's attracting these women to life, to Islam. The changing and transforming their lives. And so this is something that we have to consider. And really, when you consider the spiritual aspect, all misconceptions about the Muslim woman and oppression are completely dispelled. They don't stand. One of the great male companions said that we companions were never presented with a hadith to which Sayyidah Aisha did not present a satisfactory solution. They attested to her brilliance. They affirmed her great knowledge that she had. And the Prophet said that seeking knowledge is obligatory on every Muslim, and that includes the females. Females are included in this. That she also has the great honour, because knowledge in Islam is greatly honoured. You know, when anybody goes out in the path of seeking the sacred knowledge, there's many traditions of the Prophet that talk about that this is a very noble and virtuous thing. And so Islam does not seek to deprive women of this rank. You know, to have knowledge, to be a possessor of knowledge is a very great rank in Islam. And so Muslim women throughout the centuries have actually demonstrated great abilities in knowledge and have been great teachers. And this is a great legacy that we have, a great heritage that we have that we need to dig out and really present so that people can see the reality of Islam and what Islam expounds. And so these were just some of the points that I wanted to mention. I mean, one of the issues that I would like to say is that oftentimes some cultural understandings can be confused with religion, with Islam. So where Islam seeks to liberate the woman, sometimes people assume or think that because people are Muslims, it's Islam that's teaching them, or they're gaining their instructions from Islam. But really, we have a lot of issues, and these are cultural barriers that really denigrate the woman. Because if I look at with all my experiences of teaching and dealing with females, I have seen that it's nothing but cultural barriers that really are obstacles in women reaching their potential in society. Because Islam did not prohibit women. Islam encouraged women to be active citizens of the society. So what we really need is a revival of Islam. Really, a revival of Islam will give women all their rights. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for that enlightening talk. I'm going to go on. Okay, so someone's asking, how can the inferior position of women in society of radical Muslim countries such as Saudi Arabia be explained? I don't know who wants to take this.
Well, they can't be explained by Islam, that's for sure. They cannot be explained by Islam because clearly you see in there, women are not permitted to drive, yet you have many Muslim women in the UK drive. In fact, I drove here. So what happens in countries like Saudi Arabia can definitely not be explained by Islam.
For one of the early Christians, you used the Canterbury Tales as an example to show why Britain was sexist during Cromwell's time. How is this so when Canterbury Tales were a product of the 14th century, while Cromwell was in power during the 17th?
certain passages of the CT are commentary against sexism and basics. Was that clear? This was quite.
No, I read that.
Okay.
Just getting the card. Yeah. Firstly, I didn't make that a session in regards to the dates. You made that. Oh, if I did, it was incorrect from my part. It was used as an example for Britain rather than a comparative piece related to Chroma and Britain. But I just want to read something in regards to the Canterbury Tale. So Chaucer in his female pilgrimage thought of women as having an evil-like quality that they always tempt and take from men. They were depicted as trustworthy, and you can go on, but these are interpretations of the Canterbury Tales. And one of my friends, he happens to be a priest, and when I mentioned this, it's something that he can relate to, that the Canterbury Tales, they did play a role in defining the status of women in Britain. So in some parts, completely, it can call out sexism, and in some parts, it can actually perpetrate it. So that's just a literature. And one thing I wanted to mention in regards, if I can just add on to that, is that the status of women, it's not monolithic. So you have one country that may interpret Islam in a more strict manner based on their teachings and based on their scholars. And you may have another, and that's why someone put up that Malaysia, they don't have an issue with the status of women. When I went to Malaysia, I saw women driving motorcycles, and I was pointing to my husband, and I'm like, that's amazing. We don't have that in the UK. So you go to Saudi, and their perception of women, it's very, it's one-sided, and that's not healthy. And then you go to certain countries, but that's why there is no society that is actually the ideal society when it comes to women. And for those who ask that question, you need to ensure that you don't use Saudi and you don't use Muslim countries as your judge of what Islam is. We as the Muslim community don't use it as a judge. I disagree. For example, Muslim women don't have to wear all black. It's the culture of Saudi for women to wear all black. It's not, you go to Nigeria and they've got so many amazing colours, and you go to Hajj and you see the Nigerians wear colour, you see the Saudis, then you see the Pakistani women wearing salwar kameez, and you're like, okay. So no country is monolithic, and it's never been like that in history. So don't judge it by the culture, judge it by Islam, and that's what's why the importance of education is imperative. And for those who are interested, there's some amazing scholars online that do some amazing series. You have Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah, amazing. He's got a series called Great Women in Islam. You have Imam Abdullah Adabi. He speaks about controversy, hadith, and everything. You have Dr. Hisham Al-Awadi. He speaks about great women around the Prophet ﷺ. You have Dr. Akram Al-Nadwi. You have Al-Muhaddithat. And I've got a bibliography. I'm teaching a course at the moment. I've got a bibliography of 20 books. And they're amazing. And if anybody is interested in them, I can send it to Hisham or one of the girls. And you can have those books and you can start your own studies. But you have to be willing to go back to the book and have that unbiased outlook. It's essential.
Why are men always the caliphs, sheikhs, ayatollahs, muftis, etc.? Only a handful of women have been noted in comparison over 1400 years.
So the question is why? Well, to be honest, the doors of scholarship are wide open for women, just as they are open for men. Like I mentioned, Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha is a great example of scholarship in the household of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So I think that in recent times there's just been a decline in female scholarship. It's definitely rare in this age, but now we have a great opportunity for women to
take that challenge and be actually, great scholars. So why not take this void, this opportunity of really studying and delving deep in knowledge, because there's no prohibition from women actually even becoming a mufti. I mean, how many women do you know is mufti? Have you heard? It's so rare. So I think that there's, from the point of Islam, knowledge is encouraged. We see from the Prophet, peace be upon him, knowledge is encouraged. Women can excel the ladder of scholarship, and actually even in spirituality. We have many examples of women in spirituality show actually great spiritual powers over their male counterparts. One of the wonderful stories of the auntie of Sheikh Abdul Qadir, and she was actually approached because the land was bereft of rain. There was severe drought, and the people had gone. And so we have in Islam, there's a prayer for seeking the rain. You implore, beseech God for rain. And so the people went out and they beseeched God that that rain would fall. Nothing happened. And so they were in a very difficult situation. They went to this great woman, the auntie of Sheikh Abdul Qadir, and they beseeched her and they asked her, "Can you pray on our behalf?" And so she swept her courtyard and she said, "Lord, I have done the sweeping, now you do the sprinkling." And water began completely pouring from the sky. And so this is what we say is a miracle. We believe that there are certain saintly people who have miracles which are unlike the miracles of the prophets, of course. So there's no prohibition, and so the question is why? We have to, yes, it's a very good question, why is that when the doors are wide open? So I hope that some of you great women here will take that that step to becoming a great female scholar and actually even becoming a mufti and issuing legal edicts, fatwas, when you're consulted on religious matters.
So the next question is, how would you explain that husbands are allowed to hit their wives, even if it's where the last solution to marriage conflicts prescribed in the Quran? How are we to reconcile this with what you just mentioned, that domestic violence is not tolerated in Islam?
Okay, so when you look at, you have to analyze the verse. So there's one verse in the Quran that is taken negatively. You have to look at the word. There are different interpretations for that verse from different scholars. And the verse, what is the context? That if the woman and if the wife is almost guilty of sexual infidelity. So on that basis, not that you hit, is that you leave her bed. And the scholars have interpreted it as that. And I was actually, it's quite strange, I was looking up all the different translations on this just a few days ago. And when you read the different translations, you'll have one translation that is like, beat them, and then you have another translation is just leave their bed. So you have different scholars that interpreted it in a different way based on their social context. So we go back to what is the correct translation. So one is, you look at it from a humanistic perspective. When a husband and wife, when there is something so serious taking place, they have an argument. And what does the husband do? He's like, I'm leaving. And what usually happens, he walks out. He walks out and it's done. They're not talking for a few days. So what the Quran says is, when there is something so serious taking place from your wife, then you leave and you move away from her. And from a marital context, me and my husband, we're like absolutely amazing. But there are times when I am like really angry, he knows that he has to be quiet. When I'm like, when I step over the line, he gives me the look and I'm like, okay, I can't say anything. one of us are not oppressing the other. It's just we know what each other's threshold is. There are tons of hadith in the Quran. There are tons of verses in the Quran that speak about be good to your wives. The best of you are the ones who are best to their wives. But there's this one problematic verse, and when it is problematic, you have to look at it in an unbiased way. The scholars have to look at it, and for those who are interested to study this further, so from my end is leave their bed. That's the way I interpret it. That's the way I have studied it. I would advise those who are interested and who do find this problematic, and it's okay to find this problematic. You should be concerned about domestic violence. There are some really good resources online. So if you type in Islam, domestic violence, prohibition, PDF, you will get countless resources online where you find the certain verses. And I know you're dying for a question because you've just been like looking at me all that time. But what's your question? The issue is you have come here with your preconceived notions that Islam is this. No, you have come here. You have come here with your preconceived notions that Islam is a certain way. So, irregardless, I am not, and we are not. We have internalized our oppression. We are not given the right to believe this because of Islam. So here's the thing, Islam has this many verses, cultural context. You are interpreting it from your context, from your biased view. With that, you are and not every verse is taken literally. It's not. I don't, as a religious conservative Muslim, and you have the Quran where the Quran says the Quran is easy for the people. So for that reason, it was understandable. But the Quran also cannot be taken literally. Alif and mim. If I recite it, you don't understand that. I have no idea what that is. But here's the thing. Irregardless of what we say, and that's why I can't even engage in a discussion with you, because you will not be willing to listen, and you won't. So you, irregardless of me and the teacher, and you can add on to it. There is no benefit, and I'm being frank and I'm being honest. There is no benefit in me engaging in a discussion with you because, as far as you're concerned, I've internalized my oppression. I would rather spend time discussing with those who are even willing to listen to me. Is Islam, is Islam a religion of peace?
I didn't ask this question. I asked the question: what is the overwhelming evidence that we should believe over what?
The overwhelming evidence.
What it actually says in the
Quran. Like I said, it's very delusional for you to come in here and expect you to have this amazing understanding of Islam. It won't happen. If you really want to have it, then you can have a discussion with me offline. I will give you my email. We can go back and forth for 1 year, for 2 years, for 3 years. I give you the open invitation. I have scholars, I have teachers. We will have that debate. Unfortunately, it cannot happen in the next 10 minutes or the next 2 minutes. If you want it to happen in 2 minutes, it's not going to happen. So I give you the open invitation. You take my email address. We'll have that discussion, go back and forth. If you're satisfied, if you can find some common ground with me and you as a human being and appreciate that, okay, I believe this because I truly believe it, and you are free to have your views, then fine. If you are unwilling to find that common ground, then you can go your way and we can go our way.
In regards what I mentioned about Islam being a religion of peace, actually, was there not some study done very recently that showed that the Bible had more verses, more such verses? Can anybody elaborate on this? I remember reading something on social media very recently, and the study found that the Bible had actually more such verses of what you are trying to say about the Quran. So, what do you want to say about that? And also, regards the Islam being a religion of peace, it is a religion of peace. It is a religion of peace, and that's what I have studied. I spent 5 years in Syria studying Islam, and I didn't find that Islam is anything but a religion of peace. In fact, I do many events up and down the country refuting ISIS. Actually, I've got one on the 19th of March, and you're welcome to come to that in London, refuting ISIS.
Actually, one of my main focuses in lecturing and speeches is refuting ISIS and actually demonstrating how barbaric their ideology is, because Muslims want to live in peace with their neighbours. We've had in Syria, where I lived for 5 years, we've had Jewish communities, Christian communities live side by side with the Muslims for centuries, and the Muslims never said anything to them, but they lived with each other in harmony. I actually walked through some Jewish quarters in Syria, and there were communities that lived there in peace. The history of Islam shows that Islam is a religion of peace. There's no doubt about it. And so I think that we have to be very careful that we don't get swallowed by the narrative that's often in the media that wants to separate and cause dissension among the Muslims and the non-Muslims. We should never allow this to happen. But we should understand the great ethical principles of Islam, of living in peace, of doing good to one's neighbour. Islam teaches great ethics, the highest ideals in character and virtue. How many times we read about doing good to one's parents, to one's neighbours, even if they're non-Muslim. Doing good to humanity, spreading peace, showing and exemplifying the best character at all times. This is Islam. And I'm really sorry if anybody has, other than this image of Islam, I feel that we need to do much more, actually, and really do many more talks to clarify what Islam truly is.
Thank you. The next question is asking, to what extent would you say the identity of female British Muslims has been influenced by the wider British society and culture?
To what extent? I think it's a great extent. And remember, within the Islamic, within the Sharia, we have the Urf. The Urf is the local culture. Every community and the Muslims within the community, they are influenced by their local culture. So I as a British Muslim woman, I am completely integrated whilst I maintain and I hold on to my own culture. So yes, I may wear the headscarf and I may wear the abaya, but I know tons of women that are wearing jeans, that are wearing tops, that they don't necessarily wear the Asian Pakistani dress anymore. So in terms of embracing the dress, they are within the Islamic dress. In terms of, so it depends in terms of the food, in terms of the clothes, in terms of even the outlook, in terms of the ethics, and there are some great ethics within British society that are also Islamic, so you take them up. So I think as Muslims, I find that we are completely integrated but we don't assimilate. Here's the thing, there's a difference between integration and assimilating within your community. So I would say we are. I'd say, and I think a lot of the Muslims within this crowd, whether male or female, they can attest to that, and they can say that I'm a proud British Muslim, and I don't feel like that takes anything away from my faith. And we are here, and we're here for the betterment of society. And I'm not supposed to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is for Shaikha Safia. Why does it have to be 2 women witnesses for every 1 man witness in the courtroom? So, the guidance question.
Okay, so here's a point that there are legislation in the Quran, in the Sharia, but the point that we have to understand is that we should not infer from them some sort of inferiority of the women. You see, because clearly, as I've already mentioned it in my talk, the rank of any, whether male or female, is defined by piety, by righteousness. You see, so Islam recognizes that men and women are different. And there's lots of wisdoms that sometimes are apparent and sometimes are not, regards why there's certain rulings of certain things. But the key point to remember is that does not mean that women are inferior or they're any less than men. This is not what defines a better or a worse person. So this is a key point. I think we have to go beyond, get beyond this rut of inferring inferiority by the woman's dress or by some other outward thing. It's clearly not the case. So, inshallah ta'ala,
on that note, actually, there have been quite a few questions about hijab in particular, but also about other forms of covering and what exactly that means for a Muslim woman, how that differentiates between those who are less and more pious, etc. So,
well, the outward, yes, in Islam we wear the hijab. And actually, have you ever looked at pictures of the Virgin Mary? You looked at pictures of the Virgin Mary. What's on her head? What's on her head? She's wearing a scarf. I've not seen one picture of the Virgin Mary except that she's got a scarf on her head. So the scarf and what we're talking about, does it mean that you're less pious or something? In Islam, we of course the women's dress is the hijab, but it does not mean or does not give us permission to look down on a Muslim woman who does not observe the hijab. Because we're not supposed to look down, because who knows that the ultimate ends of human beings? We don't know. We're not there to condemn people. We're there to encourage people and raise people. As a teacher, in all the talks and courses I do, I never look at anybody in the crowd, with condemnation or they're any less than me. I mean, this is the realm of the divine. God can say who's better and who's not, and who's higher with Him than This is. So I think the key point is that we don't look down, and we actually encourage if there's Muslim women who don't wear the hijab, well, and you do, then you can encourage and you can be a support to them, because sometimes it's difficult. In society they might feel that there's pressures that they wear and so on. And so I think that we need to be a positive force, actually, as opposed to looking with the eye of denigration.